For blacks in Delaware, daily life was a challenge.
What was it like living in Wilmington, Delaware in the 1930s as an African American?
The 1930s, I can sum it up in one word: stay in your place.
I had looked forward with considerable anticipation to coming to Delaware because it was just outside of Philadelphia, and I didn't want to go back south, actually. So I was happy about the invitation to come. But when I got here, I suddenly found that the place was segregated, you know, that segregation was legal here. I had not anticipated that segregation would be legal just a few miles south of Philadelphia. But once the decision had been made, it was too late to change. So I came. There was no place to live. I couldn't check into a hotel. A principal, Mr. Waters, took charge of me, and he had located a place for me, which was at the Walnut Street YMCA. So thanks to him, I got this place at the Walnut Street Y, which had dormitories at the time, very nice ones.
In the hospitals in the city, they had special wards just for black people. All black patients were housed in the basement of, say, Milford Hospital, Nanticoke Hospital, Kenton General Hospital. To our amazement, we went into the basement of one of these buildings where all the black patients were. And when the patients had their beds rolled up, their heads would hit the pipes and things because they were down in the basement with the furnaces and all those kinds of things. And I don't care, regardless of your ailment, whether you were in there for maternity reasons or any illnesses or surgery, you were in the basement.
The law in this state said that black children could not be taught by white teachers, and white children could not be taught by black teachers. Yet at Governor Bacon Health Center, we had a school, and the children were white and the teachers were black, and nothing was done about it. But there was segregation. For instance, I had come out of college and I was a certified lifeguard. Now, we had a swimming pool there, and the kids went into the swimming pool, but I could not get in that pool with them. I was a certified lifeguard. I was the only lifeguard. Now, to teach them how to swim, and we have a picture of it, a white student who was there working from the university during the summer would get in the pool, and I would tell him what to do and to instruct him how to instruct the kids when they got into the pool.
My grandmother called me. They called me Trixie. That was my nickname. Trixie, come here. I want you to come and look out the back window. I said, what's going on? She said, I want you to see what's happening out here. And there was the cross, a very large cross, burning. And I said, oh my, I said, why are they burning it? Why? She said, I don't know. I said, I hope they aren't going to, you know, put anybody on the cross or do anything to anybody tonight. And we stood there for a few minutes just watching this cross burn.
As I think about education in Delaware, I concentrate mostly on the harm that was done during the days of segregation.
Prohibited from attending junior high and high schools reserved for whites, African American children often had to travel great distances to continue their education beyond the 6th grade. Howard High School, the only free black high school in the state, was over 100 miles from communities in southern Delaware.
You finished the Frankfurt School 9th grade. What did you do then?
Well, you only had two options. You got a job either on the farm or in some industry there, and it was limited industry, or you had to find a way to go to another school.
At the time that I started school, we had to be bused. There was a bus that came up from Delaware City. Mr. Earl Perry owned the little bus. He picked up the children in Delaware City and in Newcastle and in Buttonwood and a few students on Newcastle Avenue and took us to Howard High School.
11th grade, I rode the bus. My dad purchased a bus to transport youngsters from southern Sussex County to Millsboro, Delaware, where another person that had purchased a bus would take youngsters that he had picked up in Millsboro and surrounding areas and take them to the Richard Allen School in Georgetown. And when Dad dropped us off at Millsboro, he would then go back and get the elementary youngsters and take them to the Frankfort 206 school.
The thing that was so bad was the parents had to pay for their transportation for 3 months, and then the state would reimburse them. So many of the children in Delaware City that finished 8th grade there could not go to high school because they did not have the money to pay for 3 months transportation to get their money refunded. There were very few from Delaware City that were able to continue their education after 8th grade because of the cost of transportation.
So I called it playing checkers with education. They'd finish an 8th grade school, they'd come to Milford and finish the 9th grade, and those who could afford it would go to Booker T and finish the 10th grade and then go on to Delaware State College, where they finished the 11th and 12th grade, or sacrifice and come to Wilmington and at their own expense stay with relatives or friends. That was a hardship. Some people couldn't afford it financially, and many people dropped out of school, talented people. We don't know how many of them became disillusioned and discouraged. It's frustrating to think of what happened during the days of segregation.
The 1954 Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, declared school segregation unconstitutional. It met widespread resistance throughout southern white communities.
Wait a minute, Milford, in 1954, there were a lot of, there was
oh my goodness, 1954, Milford had the only riot that was held because of a 1954 decision, integrating of schools. And that was quite a time in Milford.
Just what started this whole thing, fellas?
I don't know of any particular incidents that really started the thing off. I know the student council was going to have a dance, and then some rumors got around about one of the colored boys making a date with one of the girls out at school, which wasn't true, and that got around. It was just all rumors, I believe.
What do you fellas think about all the fuss they're kicking up down here over the school situation?
Well, I think it's a lot of nonsense, and they should stop and let us get back to school.
And back to the football team?
Yeah, back to the football team.
Then, young lady, what do you think about Milford High School's trouble?
Well, I don't think it is actually the children's fault. I think it's more the parents, because it seems as if it's the parents that want us to go out there.
We went home on one of the occasions there, and my mother had a shotgun behind her door. You see, the white youths would come up at night and throw glass bottles, bricks through the screen porch, through the windows, and even try to harass. They did harass a lot of the black kids if they were around on the streets. So people in the area where we live, and that was in North Street, Milford, many of them had guns available just in case. And my mother, I went home that time and saw the gun behind the door, shotgun. Of course I was alarmed.
The violence in Milford effectively halted progress toward statewide school desegregation in Delaware. Outraged, the African American community pressured the state to implement the Supreme Court decision. Lewis L. Redding, who was part of the legal team that argued the Brown case, led this effort.
Along with a group of other early civil rights workers, with Lou Redding being one of the shining lights, we launched out in turning Wilmington around, and Delaware. We were just like gadflies, and we would go down to Dover and talk. we would go to the schools and picket. And we would talk to the principals, the superintendent of schools, until finally, I guess they got weary of seeing us. And then also, we had a great deal of help from the national office of the NAACP. They sent people down because they were used to negotiating. And so they helped us considerably also, until finally we broke through in victory. We still kept on because, as you know, they were wanting to do as little as possible. And we were determined that we would be equal.
Segregation is our enemy. It must be removed. Segregation is our enemy. It must be removed, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
It wasn't until 1967 that the last legally segregated school district went out of existence. It took 10 more years of litigation to desegregate the Wilmington schools. Black children began to attend schools with whites and had greater opportunities to complete high school.
The schools were totally segregated at first. But as black children became aware of things that were happening in the community, their own awareness increased. And they began aggressively to ask questions, to indicate that they were concerned, and to actually become quite militant in some areas eventually. I think the education of black children, especially the older black children, was very good for the movement as a whole.
But inside these desegregated schools, black children often encountered new obstacles to equal educational opportunity.
Most of the classes called special education were overpopulated with black students, which was quite interesting because some of the people I found who were labeled mentally retarded were quite bright, quite far from being mentally retarded. What would be needed was an understanding of more than just the test, but an understanding of background situations.
Desegregation also greatly affected African American educators. Many teachers and administrators who had power in the old segregated system lost their positions of authority. In the upheaval of desegregation, many faced relocation and reassignment.
Now, they knew that this move was coming
yes.
Several years before, and we were supposed to bring in some white staff, a certain number of white staff to Howard, and Del Castle was supposed to bring in a certain number of black staff to Del Castle. And I think they did, both schools did that, but Howard actually did what it was supposed to do and followed the numbers.
But
I don't think Del Castle did.
Yeah.
And therefore, we lost a lot of our black teachers.